All right, let's empty the notebook with the MMQB's Albert Breer and Robert Klemko. And guys, it wasn't too long ago in the AFC West, we thought that division may have been the best in the AFC. Well, since then, 6 weeks left in the season, the West has just one winning team, and that's the Chiefs, and Kansas City has won just one game over the last 5 weeks. So let's start with Kansas City. Albert, what is wrong with the Chiefs?
Well, I think part of it's the reason why they drafted Patrick Mahomes. You know, I think they felt like internally, they're not going to admit this, but they felt internally like they'd sort of figured out where the ceiling was with Alex Smith. And the idea of drafting Patrick Mahomes, even though you've got Smith on your roster, is to try and see if you can go further than that. And so I really think Matt Nagy did a great job of gaming it up early in the year. And I think defensive coordinators have caught up to some of the things that they were doing, some of the spread concepts they were running with Tyreek Hill and Kareem Hunt. And I think what's resulted now is you see that ceiling coming back, where that ceiling was for Alex Smith, the reason for drafting Patrick Mahomes. I think all of that's sort of come back, and that's where we are right now. And they've got to figure out a way to, and they're not as dominant as they were defensively without Eric Berry, and they've got to figure out a way to get out of that rut offensively.
I think an underrated loss that these guys suffered was Chris Conley about a month ago. Wide receiver was having a great year, and I think every year there are players who emerge on teams who fall under the radar and don't get that recognition because they do suffer an injury in midseason. And he was having a big impact in terms of taking pressure off of Travis Kelce, taking pressure off of Kareem Hunt, whereas I think teams feel more comfortable stacking the box against them and bracketing Kelce because they don't have that outside the numbers receiving option. Tyreek Hill, as talented as he is, isn't that sort of player yet.
Right, and I think the interesting thing about that, build on what Robert said, Conley is a guy who can move the chains. And as spectacular as Hill and Hunt and Kelce can be, like, they aren't those types of players as consistently as somebody like Conley is.
How about the rest of the division? Obviously, it's a down year for Denver, the Raiders as well. Could the Chargers at 4-6 actually be the best team in this division? They're coming off a blowout win over the Bills. Nothing on paper really knocks your socks off about this Chargers team, but there they are, starting to contend in the division now.
Well, I think we all knew at the beginning of the season that they were going to have a tremendous pass rush, and they've laid down that base. And I think that Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram have the effect of making everybody on that defense look a lot better. And then when you can get after the passer on third down, and those guys can also stop the run really well, I think you have a great foundation. I'm not going to sit here and say that I knew that they would be the best team in the AFC West at this point, and I don't even know if that's necessarily true right now, but I do think that they have a good chance to run the table and make the playoffs.
And I think we got to go back and look at part of the reason why they were so disappointing in 15 and 16. I mean, they had an almost unprecedented run of injuries. I mean, you could make the argument the reason Mike McCoy isn't still there is because of all the guys that wound up injured. And so I don't think there's ever a huge question about the talent in the roster. Not to say they didn't have holes, but I think there was always ability there. Part of it was a matter of staying healthier, and they've been healthier this year. I mean, to get Denzel Perryman back on the field. Mike Williams goes down, but they get a little lucky there that wasn't a season ender because it could have been. I think part of this is just, injury luck, and then the leadership of Anthony Lynn. And I think you put a rookie coach in that situation, and you're 0-4, and everything they've been through. I mean, the team moved, everything that team had been through and everything that they've been through the last couple of years from an injury standpoint. I think you got to give Anthony Lynn a lot of credit for finding a way to get the team to put its foot in the ground at 0-4 and pivot and now come out of this in a position where they can contend. They've obviously had some help with the Chiefs coming back to the pack, but to come out of an 0-4 start the way I have, I think is impressive on the coaching staff's part.
Lions, Panthers, Seahawks, Falcons, all are at 6-4 or better and fighting for just 2 wild card spots. The Cowboys are 5-5, and Bert, let's start with Dallas here. No Ezekiel Elliott for a couple more games here. Can the Cowboys save their season and still be in some form of contention when Zeke comes back?
They're relying on so many young guys on defense, and so they've now, I mean, their offense was so good last year that they could be just average on defense and ride out some things because they were playing with leads a lot because they can control every game through the running game. They can't do that anymore. And so I think that leads to some of the issues they have defensively, and losing Sean Lee doesn't help, being exposed to some degree. Offensively, I just think Zeke was their identity. Like, I think he was so much a part of what they were. And the reason why, just look at it. they were in second and 6, second and 5 constantly. They were in 3rd and 2, 3rd and 1 constantly. And I talked to somebody there a couple weeks ago about losing Zeke, and he said, he made it real simple. He said 2nd and 9 is a different world, you know. And so when you lose Tyron Smith, now you can't manage that as much. You know, with your young quarterback, there's going to be different things thrown at him because you're in these long yardage situations. And so I think because of how efficient Zeke was and how productive he was on a down-to-down basis, forget the big runs, forget his ability to catch the ball and do all those little things well, just his ability to get 4 or 5 yards every time he touched the ball was huge. And taking that out of the equation, I think, has changed everything for him. So I think the Cowboys lose a huge part of their identity with Zeke out of the lineup.
I think Ezekiel Elliott had a very underrated quality in that he could be on the field for all 3 downs, and that on 2nd down he was a threat to catch a swing pass and turn what should have been a 3-yard gain into a 10-yard gain. And the Cowboys don't have that in the backfield right now. I think over the last 2 games we've also learned what a valuable player Tyron Smith is.
Yep.
I don't think there's a better left tackle in the league, and you can always tell how good a player is when you try to replace him with somebody else. So I do think that the Cowboys have a chance here with Tyron Smith back, but it's going to be tough because that offense becomes so much more predictable when you're working with Alfred Morris at running back as opposed to Ezekiel Elliott.
So you take Dallas out of the picture here, assuming the division leaders remain there. You've got Carolina, Detroit, Atlanta, Seattle. Out of those 4, Robert, which 2 emerge as wildcard teams?
Yeah, I think at this point you have to look at strength of schedule, and there's a big disparity here because the Falcons have one of the toughest roads to the playoffs. They've still got to play the Panthers, and they still got to play the Saints. Whereas you look at a team like Detroit's schedule, and they've got Cincinnati and Chicago on the docket. So that's a humongous difference, and so I consider all these teams to be kind of pretty similar in quality and talent and the way they're playing this year, and I would give the Lions the leg up first. Out of the rest of the 3, I like the Panthers. I think they're playing really well right now. I think Cam Newton is playing best at quarterback out of these 4 teams. And the only reason I don't give the Falcons that nod is because their schedule is going to be so tough in this last third of the season.
Bert, what about Seattle? You didn't mention Seattle. They're coming off a brutal loss.
This is going to make the show better. I'm going to agree with that. I like Detroit a lot because of the quarterback. I think Stafford gives them a leg up. I wouldn't rule them out to win the NFC North. And there's one underrated thing. We were just talking about left tackles. Taylor Decker is a foundation piece for them. They believe he can be a franchise left tackle, and he's going to make the rest of that group better. And that's been something they've had to manage over the course of the early part of the season because they bring in Ricky Wagner, and Ricky Wagner is a great right tackle, but he can't play left tackle. So they were cycling through guys at that spot. Taylor Decker, I think, stabilizes everything for them up front. I think they've got a balanced roster. Not that they're spectacular all over the place, but I don't think that there are gaping holes anywhere on their roster. And so I like the Lions, maybe even to challenge the Vikings in the NFC North, and they can get a start on that by beating them on Thanksgiving Day. And then I think the Panthers are back to where they have been over the last 5-6 years defensively. You know, they took a step back last year with Kuechly having the concussion problems and everything else. And I think they've sort of regained their identity offensively. It looks at least like Cam's playing faster. I think part of that was doing some things in the running game with him to get to stress the defense, to make him a little bit more comfortable, and to get him in a rhythm. And I think that there's been so much emphasis on protecting him that you don't want to lose who he is. And so, yes, they want to get him in a position where he can dump the ball off to Christian McCaffrey and maybe save himself a hit. Get the ball out quicker so he's not taking that lick on the other side. But finding a way to get him comfortable and get him in rhythm and put him in a position where he feels like he's in command of the game. I think they've done a good job of that the last few weeks.
All right, of course, a lot still to be decided with
Right.
6 games to go in the NFC. All right, let's talk some coaching here. The last few seasons, we've seen a trend of defensive specialists being hired as head coaches. Sean McDermott, Vance Joseph, to name a few, have both struggled, though, mightily with their quarterback situations. Robert, do you think GMs are going to be hesitant in 2018 in continuing this trend and maybe shy away from hiring these defensive coordinators to take over as head coaches?
I do. I mean, you mentioned Vance Joseph and the struggles that they've had in identifying a quarterback in Denver and working with these 3 young guys that they have. And they just fired their offensive coordinator, Mike McCoy, and replaced him with quarterbacks coach Bill Musgrave. Those are easy examples, right? But you take a team that's had success, like Atlanta or Oakland. You hire a defensive head coach in Dan Quinn. He finds the right guy in Kyle Shanahan to coach his quarterback, the guy that can work with him. They go to a Super Bowl, and then by the virtue of that success, Kyle Shanahan is no longer available because he gets a head coaching job. And then you have that learning curve with the new offensive coordinator. Offensive coaches who are elevated to head coaching positions don't have to worry about that. Same case in Oakland. Bill Musgrave has great rapport with Derek Carr, not so good rapport with Jack Del Rio. Right. So he's on his way out. They elevate Todd Downing from quarterbacks coach to offensive coordinator, and I'm not putting all the blame for Oakland's struggles on Todd Downing, but I think that continuity there is what you want, especially with a very young quarterback. So I wouldn't be surprised to see this year GMs and owners look at the situations with all of these defensive head coaches and say, I think I'm going to take the best offensive coordinator available.
I mean, honestly, like one of the conclusions that I've come to having covering these coaching searches is I think we underrate leadership sometimes. Like I really think program building and leadership is the most important thing. And look, you look at the last 4 Super Bowls, 7 of the 8 coaches were defensive coaches. Belichick twice, Carroll twice, Rivera, Fox, and who am I missing? Quinn. So that's 7 of the 8 coaches. And I don't think it's because they're defensive coaches. I think it's because they're program builders. And I think if you look at every one of those guys, there's a very well-defined program in place, and they're good leaders. And so, look, Bill Belichick works with Tom Brady. Tony Dungy works with Peyton Manning. You have to have good offensive minds, and you have to have good developers of quarterbacks in the building. I don't think that they have to be the head coach. And so, my feeling on it, like somebody, and I wrote about it this week, like Nick Saban, like, you should look at him because he's a great program builder. I think that part of it, we get caught up in, okay, well, it didn't work this way, so we want to do it the other way. Or this guy was great on this side of the ball, and that's what we really need. When you make these hires, you should make them with the idea in mind, like, I want this guy to be here for 10 or 15 years. And the most important thing is that that person's capable of building a sustained program. Like Bill Belichick and Pete Carroll, we don't look at them as defensive coaches anymore, do we?
Right.
Because they're program builders. And I think that that's the quality that sometimes we lose sight of when we're focusing on what side of the ball someone comes from.
Robert Klemko, Albert Breer of the MMQB. Thanks, guys, and happy Thanksgiving. All right, it's time now for Scot's Spotlight as we welcome in former Redskins and Niners general manager Scot McCloughan. And Scott, we're going to begin in Buffalo, where the decision to bench Tyrod Taylor in favor of Nathan Peterman came back to bite head coach Sean McDermott. The move was puzzling even before Peterman threw 5 interceptions against the Chargers. When it comes to the decision to bench Taylor, what was that process behind the scenes between McDermott and the Bills front office?
Well, it's got to be, it's not so much a front office. It's got to be the coaches involved, the head coach, the coordinator, position coach, and just sitting down with your offensive staff and saying, listen, what's best for us going forward? Personally, I think Tyrod's a good football player, and he's proven that he has success in the NFL. When we put a rookie out there that is not proven, it's tough. It doesn't matter any position he's playing as a rookie, especially quarterback. It puts you in a situation where it's like something had to go on for them to Tyrod down, because that's not what you do, especially this time of the season when they still have a chance to make the playoffs. So it's interesting, but I know Sean, I know the GM, I know the player personnel director, and they're all smart guys. And so something had to happen for them to feel like this was the time to do it. If you're sitting at 2-8 or whatever, then I can understand that. But they're still making a playoff run. But they made a decision because they're the coaches, they're the front office, they're trying to do what's best for the team, and it backfired on them. And that's part of the NFL.
Scott, you said it right there. I mean, they're in the middle of the playoff hunt. They haven't been to the playoffs since 1999. When you make a move like this and it blows up the way that it did on Sunday against the Chargers, where Peterman throws 5 picks in the first half, is there some risk that you lose the players? Yes,
no doubt about it. And not from the standpoint, as a person, Nathan's a good guy. He's a really good guy. He works hard. I know him coming out and all that. But the thing about it is, the veterans want to understand that you're doing what's best for the team to get to the playoffs. That's why they do this game. That's why they practice so hard each week. That's why they play so hard on Sundays. And all of a sudden, and it's not Peterman's fault from the standpoint of throwing picks. Okay, he's trying to make plays, and that happens. but the staff's got to put the right players in the right position to be successful.
Okay, so another team that's struggling, the Broncos, only 2 years since they won the Super Bowl. They've lost 6 straight. And I'm wondering now, if you're in John Elway's seat, you look at the age of the roster, some of the guys who are in the prime of their careers, guys like Von Miller, Brandon Marshall, Aqib Talib, Chris Harris, Demaryius Thomas. When you look at that core that you've got there, and there's a very real timeline on how many more years they have to win, does that affect the way that you'd build the team going forward, how you try to fix some of the problems going forward?
No, it does. You identify your good players, of course, and age is always a factor because that's why the draft's so important. But what you got to realize is they have a good defense. They have talent on offense. The running game's average, but that's okay. You can get by with average. When I was in Green Bay, we got by with average. And won Super Bowls, went back-to-back, We won one, we lost the other one. But still, you know what I'm saying? The team they have to realize and figure out is a standpoint of the quarterback. You can't keep changing in and out, because it's not just a fact of the play during the snap and during the play going itself. It's the person that's leading during the week of practice. It's the person that's controlling the huddle and telling them, boom, here's where we're going to go. We're going to do this, and I got your back, you got my back, and let's go. But when you had change, my first 5 years in San Fran, we had 5 different coordinators, offense coordinators. And every year was new. So when you're changing quarterbacks during the season, it's even tougher because, John's done a great job, of course, like you said, the Super Bowl, but it's not easy. And they have talent. It's just not working their way right now.
Scott, so much movement at quarterback in Denver. There was a time where this team was very high on Paxton Lynch. What did they miss there on Lynch?
Well, I don't think personally, they haven't missed yet. He's a young guy. I really like him coming out of Memphis. He's athletic. He's a big guy. He can throw the ball really well. He put spin on it like, the good ones do. But, again, I'm not in the building. So I don't know everyday process, what he goes through in practice, what he goes through. He got hurt and his shoulder got put down, which happens. I would not give up on Paxton Lynch whatsoever. I think he's got a chance not to be great maybe, but to be a legit starter in the NFL and win games.
All right, 11 weeks into the season, 6 weeks to go. Let's talk some power rankings, Scott. I know you've got your top 5, so let's get to your power rankings. Entering the home stretch here. 6 weeks to go. Who you got at number 5 in your power rankings?
Kansas City Chiefs.
Despite what we've seen the last 5 weeks or so.
Yep. I think with the defense and I think with Alex, knowing the kind of person he is, I drafted him in San Fran, and I'm not biased towards him, but I think he's talented enough to make you win games late in November, December, and that team's built for bad weather games. That defense, I'm telling you, come off the ball, it's unique. And I know they've been struggling, but if you want to struggle in the NFL, you struggle right now. Then you get on a hot pace again. And that's what they're going to do, I feel. That's what they're going to do.
Well, what do you think that they've lost then? Like, what did they have over the first month and a half of the season that they haven't had the last month that they need to get back?
Albert, I think they're just in a funk. They're just it's a 16-game season, of course, prior to the playoffs, but they're just not hitting on cylinders right now. They started off really well, and everybody was on the bandwagon. Everybody's like, Alex be, MVP of the league, and they went to New England and beat them really bad, first week of the season. They're just in a funk, and it happens. I played pro baseball, and we played a lot of games. You go through streaks where it's like, why can't I hit? Nothing's changed. Same thing in football. They have the coaches coaching them, no doubt about it. The scheme's a scheme. It changes each week, but they have the same voices in their head. I think they'll be just fine. Just fine.
All right, so Kansas City at 5. I don't see Kansas City on Albert's power rankings in the top 5, so that was a good surprise
Albert,
there.
He's wrong.
How about number 4, Scott? Who do you got there?
Minnesota Vikings.
Okay, what do you like about them? What have you liked, what you've seen about them, especially from a guy like Case Keenum? What's he doing so well?
Keenum's doing a really good job. The thing that's really cool about Minnesota, it kind of reminds me of the time when I was with San Fran. they have a really good defense, and they don't back down from nothing. From the front to the linebackers to the secondary, they make plays, and they know they're confident about what they can and can't do. And Zimmer does a great job, being a defensive mind, of course, as a head coach, but they just have confidence. And the Case Keenum, I love it because it's one of those guys. Everybody's like, well, he's number 2. He's gonna be number 2 forever, and he's out there producing. And it's cool because each week when you watch them, they feel like they can win every game, and that's where it's going.
All right, so if you're Mike Zimmer right now, how do you handle the quarterback situation going forward? Is Case your guy the rest of the year no matter what, or does this continue to be a week-to-week thing where you've got Teddy Bridgewater in the bullpen ready to go?
It'd be Case until he proves that he can't. If he gets hurt or something, you can't change it. There's no reason to change it. The NFL is so hard to win week to week, and they prove they can with Case. And Teddy's going to be a good quarterback, like I said last week. He's going to be going forward, but don't rock the boat. Just let the guy just roll and roll.
All right, Kansas City 5, Minnesota 4. Scott, who's number 3 on your power ranking?
New Orleans Saints.
So you're all in. You're all in on the Saints, despite the schedule that they face down the stretch here. You're all in.
I'm in because Breeze is a stud. Okay, we all know that he's the first ballot Hall of Famer, all that stuff. They're running the ball. And you got both facets, and the defense is playing well. But if you have both facets on the offense, it gives you an opportunity every week against whoever you play, to win. And I'm telling you, when everybody schemes New Orleans, prior to stop Drew, because they're going to throw the ball, they're going to throw the ball, they're going to throw the ball. They're running the ball more than they're throwing it now, and I think it's awesome. I think it's they're coming downhill. The old line's playing well. The running backs are running hard between the tackles. And all of a sudden you get to the third and fourth quarter. I tell you, those defenders get tired of tackling them big boys. And it's really cool to see.
I know, one of the things that I talked to Sean Payton about a couple of weeks ago is how the team suddenly one of the younger teams in the league. And I want to focus with you on that rookie class. We talked about them a little bit last week, Scott, with Marshawn Lattimore, Marcus Williams, Ryan Ramczyk, Alvin Kamara. Like, how has that rookie class changed the face of who they are?
Well, the thing it's they have veterans, of course, and they're all playing pretty dang good right now. But with the young guys, you're building something going forward as well. And it's tough the rookie year, like I talked about a little bit ago. Any rookie, it's hard. It's hard that first year, especially when it gets later in the season because you're not used to playing so many games. You're not used to being mentally driven so hard, or physically driven so hard. But they had a heck of a draft, and that's why it's proven out to what it is. Kamara, I love him coming out. And, it didn't mean if he's a first rounder, third rounder, fifth rounder. I know he's a football player. But that's who they identified this year, and those young guys are helping them. But also the veterans are rocking and rolling.
All right, so we got 2 spots left. 3 very good football teams, though, that we haven't talked about yet. So I'm very intrigued here, Scott. Who is number 2 on your rankings?
Patriots.
The Patriots at 2, fresh off their blowout of the Raiders. Ho-hum, another Brady Patriots run we're in the middle of.
Certainly. When you have Tom Brady, and Belichick, they're such a good coaching staff because if you go man for man talent-wise, they're not matching up with some of the things we already talked about, personnel-wise. But they been there, done it, know they can do it. And it's so impressive to see how calm and relaxed they are because they know they can win. And each team doesn't matter. They go on the road, they stay at home, they go in the playoffs, it doesn't matter. They know they can win. They have the confidence. When I was in Seattle, the back-to-back years we won the Super Bowl, we knew we could beat anybody at any time. We knew it. And the players would not lie down to anything. It didn't matter if you lost Richard Sherman. It didn't matter if you lost Earl Thomas. It didn't matter if Cam Chancellor. They all believed in each other. And that's what New England has, and they've had it. And that's what Belichick's done so good is build that culture. And they're going to be there. You wait and see. They're going to be battling and battling and battling.
They've let a lot of good players go too. So I'm wondering from a general manager standpoint, Scott, You let a Jamie Collins walk out the door. You let a Chandler Jones walk out the door. Like, how is it that the Patriots can continue to either trade away veterans or let free agents walk and still be able to make up for it?
It's because of Belichick and the staff he has around him, and that's what's so cool. And, I always say the most important thing is the talent you have on your team to win or lose games. But at that place, Belichick really being the general manager, I know Nick's, the personnel guy, and does a great job. But Belichick's got control of the whole thing, and he can identify, and I've been around a lot of coaches, but he identifies not just the talent on the field, he identifies what's going to help the team. That's why you see a lot of these guys that come, all of a sudden they're first, second, third round picks and they get cut. And, Al Davis did the same thing with the Raiders when they were rolling. But they bring them in. And here's our philosophy. You're in or you're out. And if you're in, we'll take care of you. You're going to win a lot of games. You're going to go to the playoffs, have a chance to go to the Super Bowl. If you're not in, then boom, see ya.
All right, so Patriots at 2. We've come to that moment, Scott. Number 1 in the McLuhan power rankings. Who do you got?
Philadelphia Eagles.
So that means the Eagles at 1. That means the Steelers are not in your top 5. So I want to hear what you like about the Eagles, but what made you shy away from Pittsburgh, first of all?
Well, no. I like Pittsburgh. I like Tomlin. I like their philosophy. They're all about the team. They're all about, the culture in the building. But the way Philadelphia's playing, it's just lights out. And Wentz, in my personal opinion, is a younger, Roethlisberger. That's who he is. He's a big guy that can make plays. He's not the best foot athlete in the world and all that, but it doesn't matter. They can slide in the pocket and they can make plays. And I think with Philly is the fact that, they have a running game. It's not special, but it's good enough. And the defense is playing hard, especially the front. And I've watched them, the last 5 weeks, and it's just like they have it. They have that it factor. And I think that's so important. And, it could change, when the season's over, I could change my numbers and all that. But right now, I see Philly being the best team in the NFL.
So there you have it. The McLuhan power rankings are complete with the Eagles on top. Powerful edition of Scott's Spotlight. Scot McCloughan, thanks for being with us. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, fellas.
Hey, thanks a lot, guys. Welcome to the Executive Suite. I'm the Fantasy Executive, Corey Parson. As the fantasy football regular season is winding down to an end, let's look at some matchups to help get you over the hump in week number 12. And let's start in D.C. Washington veteran tight end Vernon Davis is having a very good season. Currently, Davis is a top 10 fantasy tight end in standard formats. In the last 3 weeks, Davis has 26 targets with 16 receptions. With Jordan Reed likely out for week 12, Davis should keep the good time rolling with the New York Giants coming up on the schedule. The Giants are dead last in the NFL covering tight ends, giving up an average of 19 points a game to tight ends in PPR formats. At the wide receiver position, let's discuss T.Y. Hilton. Most fantasy owners will tell you that T.Y. Hilton has been a major disappointment this season. Hilton has put up big numbers on owners' bench and has had poor games in owners' starting lineup. In Week 12, Hilton has 2 things going for him. First, the Colts are at home, where Hilton has played his best games this season. Twice this year at Lucas Oil, Hilton has put up games with over 150 yards receiving. Secondly, in Week 12, the Colts face the Titans, who are 29th in the NFL in fantasy points versus wide receivers. The Titans secondary gives up an average of 37 fantasy points per game to wide receivers in PPR formats. Play Hilton with confidence in Week 12. Next, let's go to Kansas City rookie running back Kareem Hunt. The darling of the first half of the fantasy season has been letting his owners down as of late. Hunt has not scored a touchdown since Week 3 and has not had a 100-yard rushing performance since Week 5. Hunt's snaps has even gone down as of late. In Week 12, though, Hunt gets the Buffalo Bills run defense, which is atrocious. The Bills defense has allowed over 29 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. Not to mention, they have given up a league-leading 16 rushing touchdowns. Our symmetric rising star for week number 12 is DC running back Sam Perine. In week 11, Perine finally had the breakout performance fantasy owners have been waiting for. Perine carried the ball 23 times from 117 yards and a touchdown. Perine averaged over 5 yards a carry versus a Saints team that is in the top half of the league versus fantasy backs. With Chris Thompson and Rob Kelly both out for the season, Perine finds himself in a spot to be a fantasy football savior down the stretch. That makes him our Samaje rising star for week number 12.
All right, thanks, Corey. I'm Albert Breer. This is Last Call. For what seems like forever, the value of the NFL running back has been on a downward trajectory. Rules changed, teams at every level threw the ball more, and the role of the guys carrying the ball slowly but surely shifted from centerpiece to sidekick. Now, it looks like we're going through a big-time market correction. The NFL's three most prolific running teams, Jacksonville, Philly, and New Orleans, just so happen to be the three clubs that have most outpaced outside expectations for their respective 2017 seasons. The Panthers and Vikings, both of whom went through a shaky 2016, have rebounded behind top 10 rushing attacks. And while Jared Goff's breakthrough has been the story in Los Angeles, Todd Gurley and the NFL's 9th-ranked running game have done plenty in setting up the offense Sean McVay wanted to highlight what his quarterback does best. But it's more than just teams recommitting to the running game. It's the talent coming into the league, too. Last year, Ezekiel Elliott became just the second running back to go inside the top 5 picks this decade. And Leonard Fournette became the third this year, as the lead dog in a bumper crop at the position. And there's certainly more where that came from. While Fournette, Christian McCaffrey, Joe Mixon, Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, and Kareem Hunt have the potential to make the 2017 class generational, next year's group won't be too shabby either. Penn State's Saquon Barkley has a shot to be the third back in as many years to go in the top 5. And Alabama's Damian Harris, LSU's Darius Geis, USC's Ronald Jones, Stanford's Bryce Love, and Georgia's Nick Chubb and Sony Michel, among others, bring great depth to the crew. In fact, the amount of supply could wind up pushing some down the board if a team believes it can pluck their Jordan Howard instead of extending for an Elliott, or find a Hunt rather than going all in on a Fournette. And you want to look at the teams atop the standings, well, you'll find investment there too. The Patriots gave James White and Deion Lewis second contracts and poached Mike Gillislee from the Bills. The Steelers stuck a $14 million tag on Le'Veon Bell. The Eagles signed LeGarrette Blount and traded for Jay Ajayi. And the aforementioned Vikings paid Latavius Murray and traded up for the now-injured Cook to replace Adrian Peterson. And look, all this is always subject to change. In fact, that's pretty much the biggest thing it proves. In the NFL in particular, and football in general, where everyone is looking to do things a little different to gain an edge. Nothing is forever, everything is cyclical.